The ships came on a Tuesday morning in the year 2147. They were massive things made of dark crystal that seemed to drink in the sunlight. Hundreds of them filled the sky above every major city on Earth. People stopped in the streets and looked up. Children pointed at the strange shapes. Old men who had seen many things in their lives stood silent with fear in their eyes. Admiral Jack Morrison was eating breakfast when his phone rang. Within an hour, he stood in the United Earth Defense Council chamber in Geneva. The room was filled with generals, scientists, and leaders from every nation. Everyone was talking at once. Everyone was afraid. Dr. Lisa Grant pushed through the crowd to reach Jack. She was a small woman with tired eyes who had spent 20 years studying the possibility of alien life. Now that possibility had become real, and she looked like she had not slept in days. "We received their message," Lisa said. "I translated it myself." Jack took the tablet from her hands and read the words on the screen. The aliens called themselves the Valorian Collective. They had conquered 17 worlds before coming to Earth. They wanted humanity to surrender. They wanted Earth's resources. They wanted humans to serve them as slaves. They gave Earth 72 hours to accept these terms. "What happens if we refuse?" Jack asked. Lisa did not answer. She did not need to. General Sam Porter joined them. He was a big man with gray hair and hands that had seen war. He had commanded Earth's orbital defense network for 15 years. He knew better than anyone how weak humanity's defenses truly were. "Their technology is at least 300 years ahead of ours," Sam said quietly. "Our weapons would bounce off their shields like rain off a window. If they decide to attack, we cannot stop them." Jack looked around the room at the frightened faces. Presidents and prime ministers argued with each other. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight even though they knew they would lose. The whole world was watching and waiting for someone to make a decision. "We need to respond," Jack said. "But not with surrender and not with empty threats." He walked to the main communication console and began to type. Lisa and Sam watched over his shoulder. When he finished, he read the message aloud to the room. "To the Valorian Collective. We have received your demands. We understand that your technology is far beyond our own. We understand that by your standards, we are a young and primitive species. But before you make your final decision, we ask you to consider one simple fact. In all of human history, no force has ever conquered us completely. Not the ice that covered our world. Not the diseases that killed millions. Not even our own wars against each other. We have always survived. We have always found a way. We do not wish for conflict. We prefer peace. But if you force us to fight, we will fight with everything we have. We will fight until the last human draws their last breath. We warn you now, in the hope that you will listen. Humanity is far from harmless." The room fell silent. Some of the leaders nodded slowly. Others shook their heads. But no one argued. The message was sent into space, carried by radio waves toward the alien fleet. Commander Zethkal received the message on his flagship. He was tall and thin with skin the color of pale blue ice. He had lived for over 400 years. He had led the conquest of 6 worlds himself. He had never lost a battle. He read the human message and laughed. "These creatures threaten us," he said to his officers. "They have barely left their own planet. They fight each other over patches of dirt. They are nothing." His second in command, a younger Valorian named Catherine, looked at the data screens with some concern. "Commander, our deep scans show some unusual readings. They have weapons hidden throughout their solar system. More than we expected from a species at their level." Zethkal waved his hand dismissively. "Primitive nuclear devices. Clumsy missiles. Nothing that can penetrate our shields. Prepare the fleet for conquest." When their 72 hours end, we will show these humans what happens to species that refuse the collective. Back on Earth, Jack Morrison was already planning. He gathered his most trusted officers in a secure room deep beneath the Swiss mountains. Maps of the solar system covered every wall. Red dots marked the positions of every human ship and weapon platform. Blue dots marked the alien fleet. The blue dots outnumbered the red by more than 20-1. "We cannot win a straight fight," Jack admitted. "So we will not fight straight." Lisa joined the meeting with new information. Her team had been scanning the alien ships constantly since they arrived. They had found something strange in the data. Their shields operate on a resonance frequency, she explained. They vibrate at a specific pattern that deflects energy and matter. But that means they can be disrupted by opposing frequencies. Sam leaned forward. "What kind of frequencies?" "Sound," Lisa said. "Harmonic vibrations in specific patterns. The same kind of patterns that exist in music." The room went quiet as everyone understood what she meant. Humanity had been making music for thousands of years. They had created symphonies and songs, instruments and electronic sounds. They had turned noise into art, and now that art might save their world, Jack stood and looked at the maps on the walls. The alien fleet waited in orbit like a storm about to break. 72 hours was not much time, but it was enough. "Contact every military base on Earth," he ordered. "Wake up every sleeper cell we have on Mars and the Moon, and get me our best musicians and acoustic engineers. We have work to do." The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, either humanity would prove its warning true, or Earth would fall like all the other worlds before it. Jack Morrison looked at the blue dots on the map and made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, the Valorians would learn that humans were not easy prey. They would learn that this small blue planet held a species unlike any they had ever faced. They would learn, one way or another, that Earth was far from harmless. The 72 hours moved fast. Admiral Jack Morrison did not sleep. He drank coffee until his hands shook and kept working. Every minute mattered. Every second could mean the difference between survival and death. Dr. Lisa Grant turned concert halls into weapons factories. Musicians from every country came together in ways they never had before. Classical violinists worked beside rock guitarists. Electronic music producers shared data with opera singers. They were all searching for the right frequencies to break the alien shield's dot in a laboratory in New York. Lisa stood before a wall of screens showing sound wave patterns. Her assistant, a young man named Danny Cole, ran calculations on 3 computers at once. "We found it," Danny said suddenly. "The exact frequency range that disrupts their shield resonance. But there is a problem." "There is always a problem," Lisa replied. "Tell me." "The frequency needs to change constantly. Their shields adapt within seconds. We need something that can shift patterns faster than any computer program we have." Lisa thought about this. Then she smiled. "We do not need a computer. We need jazz musicians. They improvise. They change patterns in real time. Their brains work faster than any program when it comes to music." Within hours, teams of jazz musicians were training with military engineers. They learned to read shield frequency data the same way they read musical notes. They practiced shifting their sounds to match and break alien defenses. It was strange work, but they did it without complaint. The world was counting on them. Meanwhile, General Sam Porter activated systems that had been sleeping for decades. When Earth first formed its unified government, the leaders knew that threats might come from beyond the sky. They built secret weapon platforms on the dark side of the moon. They hid missile bases inside asteroids. They placed nuclear warheads and satellites that looked like space junk. Sam stood in the command center beneath. the mountains and watched as lights appeared on the map one by one. Each light was a weapon coming online. Each light was a small piece of hope. "The Mars colony is ready," an officer reported. "Lunar Base 7 is armed. We have 47 asteroid platforms responding." Sam nodded. It was not enough to defeat the alien fleet directly, but it might be enough to hurt them. And sometimes, hurting your enemy was the first step to beating them. Captain Kevin Drake received his orders while orbiting Jupiter. He commanded the Endurance, one of Earth's newest warships. His crew of 300 men and women had trained together for 5 years. They trusted each other completely. Kevin read the mission brief twice to make sure he understood. He would lead the first strike against the alien fleet. His ship would carry the new sonic weapons designed by Lisa's team. He would fly directly into the enemy formation and test whether the frequencies actually worked. "It is a suicide mission," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Santos. She was young but brilliant, one of the best tactical minds in the fleet. "Maybe," Kevin admitted. "But someone has to go first. Someone has to show the aliens that we will fight." Amy studied the tactical data on her screen. "If we approach from the dark side of the moon, we can use its gravity to boost our speed. We will be harder to track." Kevin smiled. This was why he valued Amy. She never wasted time complaining about impossible odds. She just found ways to make them slightly less impossible. The Endurance turned toward Earth and began its long journey home. Other ships joined them along the way. The Defiance came from the Mars Patrol. The Perseverance left its station near the asteroid belt. They were not a large fleet, but they were determined dot on Earth. People watched the countdown clock in every city square. 60 hours became 50. 50 became 40. Families held each other close. Friends said words they had been too afraid to say before. Everyone knew that life might never be the same after the clock reached zero. Jack Morrison broadcast a message to the entire planet. He stood in front of a simple gray wall with no flags or symbols behind him. He spoke plainly. "My fellow humans, in less than 40 hours, we will face the greatest challenge in our history. An alien force has demanded our surrender. They believe we are weak. They believe we will kneel before them like so many other species have done. But they do not know us. They do not know what we have survived. They do not know what we are capable of when we stand together." He paused and let his words sink in. "I cannot promise victory. I cannot promise that we will all survive what is coming. But I can promise you this. We will not surrender. We will not bow. We will show the universe what humanity means. We will show them that we are far from harmless." The message ended. Around the world, people cheered. They cried. They hugged strangers on the street. For one moment, all the old divisions between nations and peoples disappeared. They were all just humans, facing the darkness together. Commander Zeth Call watched the human broadcast with cold eyes. He did not understand why the primitive creatures were so confident. His fleet had enough firepower to turn their cities into ash. His soldiers had conquered species far more advanced than these soft pink beings. "They are delusional," Zithkal said. "Their hope is nothing but madness." But deep in his mind, a small doubt appeared. He had conquered 17 worlds. On every one of them, the people had begged for mercy when they saw the Valorian fleet. They had surrendered without fighting. They had accepted their fate. The humans were different. They saw the same overwhelming force. They knew they were outmatched. And yet they chose to fight anyway. Zethkal pushed the doubt away. It did not matter why the humans were fighting. They would lose. They would fall. And then they would serve the collective like all the others. The clock continued to count down. 20 hours. 15:10 on the Endurance. Kevin Drake gathered his crew for one final meeting. He looked at their faces and saw no fear. He saw only determination. "We do this for Earth," he said simply. "We do this for everyone we love. Whatever happens tomorrow, we make them remember us." Amy Santos stood beside him. "We make them regret coming here." The crew raised their voices in agreement. The Endurance flew on through the darkness toward the waiting enemy. Behind them, a whole world prepared for war. The countdown reached 0. The Battle of Earth began in silence. In space, there is no sound. But the violence that followed was louder than any thunder. The Endurance came around the dark side of the moon at full speed. Captain Kevin Drake sat in the command chair with his hands steady on the controls. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Santos worked the weapons console. Jazz musicians from New Orleans sat in a special room filled with instruments. Their sounds converted into shield-breaking frequencies. "Enemy fleet ahead," Amy reported. 312 ships. "They have detected us." Kevin smiled grimly. "Good. Let them watch." The Valorian fleet formed a wall of crystal ships between Earth and the incoming human vessel. Commander Zethkal gave a single order: destroy the foolish, humans who dared to attack. Beams of blue light shot toward the Endurance. Kevin threw the ship into a spinning dive, barely avoiding the deadly fire. The human ship was smaller and faster than the alien cruisers. It danced between the beams like a leaf in a storm. "Range achieved," Amy announced. "Activating sonic weapons." In the music room, a trumpet player named Marcus Jones began to play. His sound was converted into energy and shot toward the nearest Valorian ship. The alien shields flickered. They had never encountered anything like this before. "Again," Amy ordered. "Shift the frequency." Marcus changed his melody. A piano player named Kate Sullivan joined him. Their music merged into something new. The alien shields flickered again, then failed completely. "Shields down on the lead cruiser," Amy shouted. Firing missiles. The Endurance launched a spread of nuclear warheads. They crossed the distance in seconds and struck the unprotected Valorian ship. The explosion tore the crystal vessel apart. Pieces of it scattered across space like broken glass. Commander Zethkal stared at his screens in disbelief. He had just lost a cruiser to a species he considered primitive. His officers looked at him with fear in their eyes. "It was luck," Zethkal snarled. "Focus all fire on that single ship. Destroy it now." 20 Valorian ships turned their weapons toward the Endurance. Kevin saw the incoming fire on his screens. There was no way to dodge all of it. "All hands, brace for impact," he called out. The Endurance shook as enemy beams hit its hull. Armor plating melted and tore away. Emergency alarms screamed. But the ship kept flying. Human engineers had built it to take punishment. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Amy reported. "Sealing emergency bulkheads. We lost 12 crew members." Kevin felt each death like a knife in his heart. But he could not stop. He had to keep fighting. "Target the next ship," he ordered. "Marcus, Kate, give me everything you have." The music grew louder and more complex. More musicians joined in. Drums and guitars and electronic synthesizers all blended together. The sound waves became weapons. Another Valorian ship lost its shields. Another explosion lit up the darkness of space. Back on Earth, Admiral Jack Morrison watched the battle unfold on the big screens in the command center. The Endurance was doing the impossible, but it could not last forever against such overwhelming numbers. "Launch the second wave," Jack ordered. "Activate all hidden platforms." Across the solar system, human weapons came alive. Missiles launched from asteroid bases. Energy cannons fired from lunar platforms. Drones by the thousands swarmed out of hidden stations and flew toward the enemy fleet. The Valorians had expected to fight one ship. Instead, they found themselves attacked from every direction. Their perfect formation broke apart as captains tried to protect their vessels from the sudden storm of human weapons. General Sam Porter commanded the ground-based defenses. "Target their supply ships first," he ordered. "Cut them off from their fuel and ammunition." Human missiles found the Valorian cargo vessels hiding behind the main fleet. Explosion after explosion destroyed the enemy's supplies. Without fuel, the alien ships could not run. Without ammunition, they could not reload their weapons. Zethkal felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Panic. The humans were not fighting like any species he had conquered before. They did not care about honor or proper battle tactics. They attacked weak points. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They fought like animals with nothing to lose. "Commander, we have lost 60 ships," Kethron reported. His voice shook with fear. "The human weapons are destroying our shields. We cannot adapt fast enough." Zethkal looked at the battle map. Red explosions marked dead Valorian vessels. The human fleet had grown as more ships joined from Mars and the outer planets. They were still outnumbered, but they were winning. "Order the fleet to retreat," Zethkal said. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. He had never retreated from anything in his long life. But staying meant death. The Valorian ships turned and fled toward the edge of the solar system. Human vessels chased them, firing until the last moment. The Endurance, battered and burned, flew at the front of the pursuit. On the bridge, Kevin Drake watched the enemy run. His arm hung useless at his side, broken when a console exploded during the battle. Blood covered his uniform, but he was smiling. "They are running," Amy said. She sounded like she could not believe her own words. "We actually made them run." The battle lasted 19 hours in total. When it ended, 63 Valorian ships had been destroyed. Hundreds more were damaged. The greatest military force in the galaxy had been hurt by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Human losses were heavy too. 12,000 soldiers died in orbit. 3 lunar bases were destroyed completely. The Mars colony had survived an attack, but many of its domes were cracked and leaking air. Jack Morrison addressed the world again. He looked older than he had just days before, but there was pride in his voice. "We did it," he said simply. "We made them bleed. We made them fear us. This is not the end. They will come back. But now they know the truth. Now they know what we tried to tell them from the beginning." He paused and looked directly into the camera. Humanity is far from harmless. Around the world, people celebrated. They had faced the darkness and survived. They had proven that courage could match technology. They had shown the universe that Earth would never kneel. But in the outer darkness, the Valorian fleet regrouped, and Commander Zethkal began planning his revenge. The celebrations did not last long. Within days, the true cost of victory became clear. Memorial services filled churches and temples around the world. 12,000 names were read aloud in ceremonies that lasted for hours. Families wept for sons and daughters who had died among the stars. Captain Kevin Drake woke in a hospital bed on Earth. His arm was gone, replaced by a metal prosthetic that hummed softly when he moved. Doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. The Endurance had taken so much damage that no one expected any survivors. Amy Santos sat beside his bed. She had stayed with him through 3 surgeries and 2 days of unconsciousness. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "We lost 97 crew members," she said. "The ship is being repaired in orbital dock. Engineers say it will take 4 months to make it spaceworthy again." Kevin looked at his new arm. It felt strange and cold. 4 months is too long. The Valorians will come back before then. "I know." Amy handed him a tablet showing military reports. Our scouts tracked the enemy fleet to the edge of the solar system. They stopped there. They are waiting for something. Admiral Jack Morrison visited the hospital later that day. He brought news that changed everything. We intercepted a Valorian communication, Jack explained. Commander Zethkal sent a message to his home world. He requested reinforcements. 5 times the original fleet strength. Kevin felt his heart grow cold. They had barely survived 300 ships. 1,500 would be impossible to defeat. How long do we have? He asked. 6 months. Maybe less if they push their engines hard. The 3 of them sat in silence. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city. Children played in a park below, not knowing that their world might end within the year. Then we have 6 months to prepare, Kevin said finally. 6 months to find new weapons, build new ships, and figure out how to beat an enemy that outnumbers us by so much. Jack nodded slowly. There might be another way. Dr. Grant has been working on something. Lisa Grant arrived at the hospital an hour later. She carried a stack of files, and her eyes had the bright look of someone who had made an important discovery. The Valorian Collective is not what we thought, Lisa began. They are not a single species. They are an empire built on conquest. 17 different species serve them. All of them conquered the same way they tried to conquer us. Kevin leaned forward, interested despite his exhaustion. So they have enemies within their own empire? More than enemies. I found hidden signals buried in their communications. Resistance movements. Secret groups planning rebellion. They have been waiting for centuries for someone to prove the Valorians can be beaten. Amy understood immediately. We just proved exactly that. If word spreads about what happened here, it already is spreading, Lisa confirmed. Our battle was broadcast across half the galaxy. Every subjugated species knows that humans made the Valorians retreat. We became a symbol of hope without even trying. Jack took over the conversation. We have been in secret contact with 3 resistance groups. They cannot fight alone. But if we coordinate our efforts, we might create enough chaos to split the Valorian forces. It was a slim hope. But it was better than no hope at all. The next 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Factories that once made cars now made weapons. Schools taught children survival skills alongside math and reading. Every human who could hold a tool worked to prepare Earth for the coming storm. Kevin Drake returned to the Endurance as soon as he could walk. His new arm still felt wrong, but he learned to use it. He trained his surviving crew and welcomed new recruits. He pushed them hard because he knew what was coming. Amy Santis became his official second in command. She spent her nights designing new battle tactics and her days drilling the crew until they could fight in their sleep. She never complained. She never showed fear. But Kevin sometimes saw her standing alone at the observation window, looking out at the stars with worry in her eyes. Dr. Lisa Grant traveled the world, teaching other scientists how to build sonic weapons. Concert halls became permanent weapon factories. Musicians trained like soldiers. The strange marriage of art and warfare that had saved Earth once was expanded and improved. General Sam Porter built new defense platforms faster than anyone thought possible. He recruited workers from every country. Former enemies worked side by side because the threat facing them was greater than any old argument. Admiral Jack Morrison coordinated everything. He slept 3 hours a night and lived on coffee and determination. He sent messages to the resistance groups in Valorian space. He planned for battles that might never happen. He prepared humanity for a war they might not survive. And far away, at the edge of the solar system, Commander Zethkal watched and waited. The human victory had shamed him. His own government had questioned his abilities. Other commanders mocked him for losing to such a primitive species. He would make the humans pay for every insult. He would burn their world to ash and scatter their remains across the void. His new fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 1,500 warships, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy a planet. They gathered in the darkness like wolves waiting to attack. The humans have been building defenses, Kethran reported. More ships. More weapons. They know we are coming. Zethkal smiled coldly. Let them build. Let them hope. It will make their defeat even sweeter. When we are finished, no one in the galaxy will remember that Earth ever existed. The fleet began its final approach. 1,500 points of light moving toward a small blue planet that refused to surrender. On Earth, alarms rang in every city. Screens showed the incoming enemy. Jack Morrison stood before the world one more time. They are coming, he said. More of them than before. They think their numbers will crush us. They think we will finally break. He shook his head. They still do not understand. They still do not know what they are facing. We are humanity, and we are far from finished. The final battle was about to begin. The second Valorian fleet filled the sky like a plague of locusts. 1,500 ships blocked out the stars as they approached. Earth. Commander Zethkal stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his screens. Begin the attack, he ordered. Show no mercy. Leave nothing standing. But as his fleet moved forward, something unexpected happened. Sensors detected ships emerging from behind the moon, not human ships. Ships of different designs, from different species, all flying together toward the Valorian Armada. What is this? Zethkal demanded. Kethran checked his readings 3 times before answering. Ships from the Kethni colonies. The Marsh people of Vega 7. Drone swarms from the machine worlds of Sector 9. Commander, these are all species we conquered. They are fighting alongside the humans. The message Elisa Grant had sent to the resistance movements had worked. The enslaved species of the Valorian Empire had risen up. Not all of them, not everywhere, but enough to make a difference. They had watched humans win the first battle and found their courage again. Admiral Jack Morrison commanded the combined fleet from Earth's orbital station. He had spent months planning for this moment. Human ships mixed with alien allies in formations designed to confuse the enemy. The sonic weapons had been shared. The nuclear warheads had been multiplied. Everyone knew the stakes. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Jack broadcast on every frequency. Today we fight not just for Earth. We fight for every world that has suffered under Valorian rule. We fight for freedom. We fight for the future. Let them see what happens when free people stand together. The battle began with fire and light. Thousands of weapons discharged at once. Ships exploded in the first seconds of combat. The darkness of space became bright with destruction. Captain Kevin Drake piloted the Endurance at the center of the human formation. His metal arm had become as natural as his real one had been. He had trained for this fight every day for 6 months. He was ready. Amy, target their command ships, he ordered. If we can kill their leaders, their coordination will fall apart. Lieutenant Amy Santos worked her console with speed that came from endless practice. I count 12 command vessels. The biggest one is in the center, hanging back. That must be where Zethkal is hiding. Then, that is where we are going. The Endurance pushed through the chaos of battle. Human ships flew beside alien vessels that looked like insects and machines and things that had no name in human language. They were all fighting the same enemy. They were all dying for the same cause. The Kethni had brought weapons that burned through Valorian armor like acid. The Marsh people used biological ships that could heal their own damage. The machine drones attacked in waves of thousands, overwhelming enemy defenses through sheer numbers. Zethkal watched his fleet begin to crack. This was not what he had expected. He had planned to crush primitive humans with overwhelming force. Instead, he found himself facing a coalition of species that had learned to hate his empire. "Fall back to defensive positions," he ordered. "Protect the flagship at all costs." But the humans did not let him retreat. Kevin Drake had spotted the Eternal Conquest and was flying directly toward it. Enemy fire scorched the Endurance. Crew members died at their stations. The ship groaned and shook as its hull cracked in a dozen places. "We are losing structural integrity," Amy reported. "If we take many more hits, the ship will break apart." Kevin looked at the enemy flagship on his screens. It was close now. Close enough to reach if they pushed just a little harder. "Set a collision course," he said quietly. Amy turned to look at him. "Kevin, get the crew to the escape pods. All of them. I will fly the ship myself." "No." Amy's voice was firm. "I am staying with you. Someone needs to operate the weapons for final approach." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Kevin nodded. He knew better than to argue with Amy Santos when she had made up her mind. The crew evacuated. Escape pods shot away from the dying ship in all directions. Kevin and Amy stayed at their posts. The Endurance accelerated toward the Eternal Conquest on its final flight. Zethkal saw the human ship coming and understood what they intended. "Destroy that vessel," he screamed. "Destroy it now." Every weapon on the flagship fired at the Endurance. The ship lost its engines. It lost its weapons. It lost everything except its forward momentum, and the two humans who refused to give up. Amy activated the self-destruct sequence. Every nuclear warhead on the ship was armed and waiting. She took Kevin's hand and held it tight. "It has been an honor," she said. "The honor was mine," Kevin replied. The Endurance struck the Eternal Conquest at full speed. The nuclear warheads detonated on impact. A sun was born in the darkness of space, consuming both ships in its fire. Commander Zethkal died without understanding how he had lost. He had commanded the greatest fleet ever assembled. He had conquered 17 worlds. And he had been destroyed by two humans who cared more about their people than their own lives. The destruction of the flagship broke the Valorian fleet completely. Without their commander, without their coordination, the enemy ships scattered in panic. The coalition forces chased them down one by one. By the end of the day, only a handful of Valorian vessels escaped to tell their empire what had happened. Jack Morrison stood before the cameras one last time. His eyes were wet with tears for Kevin and Amy and all the others who had died. But his voice was strong. "Today, we won more than a battle. We won our future. We showed the galaxy that tyranny can be defeated. We showed them that hope is stronger than fear." He paused and took a deep breath. "This victory belongs to everyone who fought. Human and alien. Young and old. Living and dead. We stand together now. We will always stand together." In the years that followed, humanity took its place among the stars. They helped rebuild the worlds that had been conquered by the Valorians. They shared their technology and their music. They became leaders of a new alliance built on freedom instead of fear. The statue was built on Earth's orbital station. It showed Kevin Drake and Amy Santos standing together, looking out at the stars. The inscription below it was simple. They showed us the way. They proved that courage has no limits. They taught the universe that humanity is far from harmless. And across 1,000 worlds, free people looked up at their own stars and remembered the small blue planet that had started it all. The planet that had refused to surrender. The planet that had changed everything. Earth, home of humanity. Far from harmless. Forever free.